How you doing, buddy? The great one, Michael Vass, my co-host from the S&B 500. What is going on, my friend? What's the 411? What's on your mind? Probably a lot you're paying attention to. You want to get off your chest?
Well, there's a bunch of things that have been happening recently. I mean, we can go with everything from the latest news about transgenders. There's a 7-year-old who's going to be part of the New York Fashion Week walk model. And it's really interesting because this is a child that since 4.5.
I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. I'm laughing because it's so appalling and such an embarrassment.
Well, it's incredible to hear that this child since 4.5 has been transgender with 2 transgender parents. And yet, it made me wonder, how long has this kind of stuff been happening, that we are seeing such young children going out and they're being part of this transgender movement? You can look back, 2015, they were talking about 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds becoming transgender, 7-year-olds, 12-year-olds. You got to be kidding me. These are kids who don't even, when you're talking about a kid who's 3, 4, 5 years old, these are kids who don't even know the alphabet. They don't know any concept of anything, and yet they're supposed to be trans. This is incredible, and it is child abuse. And it's now being celebrated in New York as Week. And that's just crazy. To me, that's just insane. And I believe it's child abuse. I think most people would tend to agree with that if you were to think about it honestly. We know that what's going on. We now have yet another problem in Taiwan. This time we have a Republican going out there. And just like I was upset when we saw Nancy Pelosi go out there, now Senator Marsha Blackburn
from Tennessee. And it's shameful because there's nothing good that can come of that. I mean, you got to question her reasonings for, especially at this time. I mean, with what we're going through currently.
Same exact thing. It's the same exact thing as when we saw Nancy Pelosi go. The answer is there is no benefit to the United States for this. There is no upside. Now, the one difference that I can give Marsha Blackburn, she is a senator, which means that she would be voting on any treaties that could be made by the United States government. So there's at least that. She has some official responsibility, unlike Nancy Pelosi, who has no purpose whatsoever because the House doesn't vote on treaties. But that being said, there is no new treaty. There's nothing new in the developments with Taiwan other than the Biden-Harris administration backing down to China. And what was the result? Well, China, after Pelosi was there, threatened South Korea, threatened Taiwan, and threatened Japan, trying to make a point that the Biden-Harris administration are weak and that they were asserting their power. Now we're going through that same cycle again. This doesn't make any sense to me. So I call out Senator Blackburn just as I did with Nancy Pelosi, because it's not in our best interest.
All strikes, we have to call out both sides.
Yeah, and you're not hearing a lot of news about that anywhere. Of course, we also didn't hear about what happened just in Illinois. The fact that there was a red flag sting that was done by the state of Illinois. 1,200 people, 1,027 people were investigated. They were checked for their compliance with essentially the red flag law of the state of Illinois. And what do you know? 300 people were out of compliance, were dangerous to themselves or others, and had their firearms taken away from them. But yet we have the state of Illinois saying, this isn't about the compliance checks. These red flag checks on people just popping in and seeing what's going on with them. That's not about taking away firearms from American citizens. They just happen to do it to 30% of the people they actually looked at. 30%. That's not like 1 or 2 people might have slipped at. 30%, or fully 1/3 of everyone that they decided to just spontaneously check out, 1/3 of them had their firearms removed, their Second Amendment rights restricted. Not one crime was recorded. No one committed a crime. They just were out of compliance and were dangerous to themselves and others. That is terrifying. That should terrify people across this nation. And it is exactly, now mind you, why did this happen? A reminder for everyone, the bipartisan Safer Communities Act that was just passed, what is it doing? It's going to pay the state of Illinois for every single person that is put on a red flag list. They are getting paid by your taxes to go out and to remove the rights of American citizens. So maybe, just maybe, this compliance check by the state of Illinois wasn't so much about making people safe suddenly and out of the blue, but no, more about Illinois getting your tax dollars for putting a dollar sign on the backs of their citizens and taking away their rights for no reason at all, because not one crime was committed and the violence in Illinois did not go down. The city of Chicago is not safer. Why? Because the criminals aren't registered and don't care about the law. They're not being stopped. That's not protecting anyone. All they did is make money. This was about making money. And since we're talking about making money, of course, everyone is talking about the student debt forgiveness.
Before we get to that, I want to mention as well, you know, you're speaking about the Second Amendment and these red flag laws and gun legislation and, you know, how they're coming for people's firearms. You know, Gavin Newsom has signed like 9 gun control laws this year, and it's terrible. California has it worse than Illinois.
Well,
I think California has it the worst in the country, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it would actually be Illinois has the most restrictions in everything that's on the Democratic wish list. And then the question would be, New York and California are almost neck and neck, although Delaware has put out a gun ban already in this, Maryland put out a gun ban, which is exactly the same as HR 1808. So they're trying to edge ahead and be even more progressive and more restrictive on the Second Amendment than everyone else. So this is crazy that we are seeing these bills being passed. And they are taking away, and the only thing they're doing is they're using American citizens to get paid federal dollars because of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And we're seeing that they're taking away American citizens' rights, but no one is made safer. That we have the same amount of crime, which is increasing in all these states and all these cities. So that's really insulting. But of course, I want to talk about Biden's student debt forgiveness. This is absolutely insane. We are looking at increasing again, just like the Inflation Reduction Act. We are again.
And last thing about the Second Amendment before we get into this, don't forget about all the data that they're leaking of people that have firearms, especially in these Democrat states. The data that's been leaked about people who own firearms. I mean, there's been states that have been doing that on purpose.
They've been doing that for several years. Again, this is all part of the same process where they are trying to demonize legal gun owners. It is a fact that 99.994% of legal gun owners, 165 million people in the United States, are not criminals. They are not the reason why crime has gone up in 11 states, the 11 most democratic states of this nation, 22 of the biggest cities in the nation, which are democratic cities. That's not the problem. But again, I want to go to the Biden student debt because this is important. That we are looking at, just like the Inflation Reduction Act. What is this doing? This is an attempt to buy votes in the 2022 and potentially 2024 election. This is going to increase the amount of inflation in this nation because they're spending money they don't have. This is going to cause poor people to be hurt more. This is going to extend the recession probably to 18 months. This is going to increase the inflation possibly to 15%. This is not a positive. And let's think about this. The top 60% of earners are the people that he is buying off right now. Not poor people, people who are making $50, $60, $70, $100,000. That's who he bought off for for $10,000. It's going to cost us $600 billion. That's you and me. Whether you went to college and paid off your loan, you're paying for someone else's loan. You've now paid for 2 loans. If you didn't go to college, you're paying for someone else's loan, even though you didn't go to college. Why am I responsible for someone else's choice? We have people like Cori Bush, Representative Cori Bush, who just 3 days ago said that she wants her constituents, who are making about 5 times less than her salary, $175,000, 5 times less, and she wants them to pay for her student loan. Not just $10,000. She wants all of her student loans paid off by these. Come on. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez can afford to buy a Tesla. She can live in a $15,000 a month apartment. Cori Bush can pay for $70,000 a year for private security to protect her and make sure that she's safe, even though her constituents, they're not safe in Minneapolis. And yet, she wants those very same constituents to pay off her debt that she could pay off at any moment, at any time. You know what? And we're going to punish the entire nation because Joe Biden wants votes. Because what happens if you, everyone who's, and I can't blame the people who got this. Yeah, you got 10,000 off because you went to school. You took a degree in lesbian dance theory. Fantastic. It has no purpose in life. It is a useless degree. So you take that degree, you're getting $10,000 off, and you know that if you don't vote Democrat, they're going to take that away from you. You won't get any more. So now they have to vote for Democrats. You have just been made a slave. He just bought off people's lives by saying, here's some free stuff. He's enslaved them. He has commoditized their lives. The government is micromanaging people's lives, and there is no benefit to America for this. This is insane. And why are we not hearing enough of this? I mean, 51% of America, and I've seen 3 polls, they average out to about 51% of Americans do not want to do this. They do not believe it has any benefit, and it doesn't. Even Democrats are coming out and saying, Joe Biden, this isn't right. And the only people who are somewhat happy with this are the very same progressives like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, who are saying, yes, it's great we got this, give us more, even though it's unconstitutional for Joe Biden to pass a law on spending because that is the right of the Congress. And you know why I know that? Because Nancy Pelosi said so herself in December of 2021. He does not have the right. It is unconstitutional, and he knows it, but he just wants to buy votes. This is insulting to Americans.
I want to weigh in on what Vass.
Yeah, absolutely. And Richard, you're all over the place. Most people know who you are. I mean, you've been in every publication. You've been on lots of different news channels. You've been around for a long time. You're a popular economist, professor.
I was in the Old Testament. I was in the Old Testament.
I know, you're a legend.
Probably read about me. I was in the Old Testament. Let me just say a few things. This whole conversation this evening has been fascinating. The issue of the day, meaning literally today and yesterday, has been this student loan thing that Vass spoke about, and he was absolutely right. I wouldn't disagree with a word he said, but I've been writing about these things for years, and I'm a professor of 55 years standing, so I've been around the college hustle for a long time, and we've been ripping off taxpayers very, very successfully for years, and I've been one of them. I admit I'm a sinner, and I have sinned by ripping them off. But one way we do it is through the federal student loan program, because the federal student loan program has served to benefit universities far more than individual students who are borrowing the money. And the evidence that Bill Bennett, who was the Secretary of Education way back in the 1980s, said this in a New York did I mention the New York Times? In the New York Times, an editorial in 1987, Bill Bennett says, well, these student loans, what's happening? Well, the colleges just see the kids can borrow the money, so they raise their prices. And so the colleges raise the prices, and they get more revenue, and then they go out and they pay professors a little more, and they get them a little lower teacher load, and they hire diversity and inclusion Gestapo to work for them, and they do a whole variety of other things that are non-academic, and they denigrate the academic process in order to promote other things, and that's what's been going on. Because you have a number of other guests in a limited amount of time, I can separate. I don't know whether I can show my hand on the screen. This is I call this West Virginia PowerPoint, by the way. That's what they do in West Virginia, where they don't have computers. I'll hold 7 figures up. There are 7 I words that begin with the letter I that characterize this student loan program. First, it's illegal. Vass spoke briefly to this. I can go back and let me just list the 7, then if you want to talk about them, I can. First, it's illegal. Second, it's inflationary, and an age inflation. We're increasing inflation with this student loan proposal by. Third, it's immoral. The pastor can probably better speak to morality than I can. I'm a mere college professor. It's inequitable. It's irresponsible. It's irrational. And, dare I say, it's idiotic. Doesn't make any sense even politically to the Democrats. So, and I can go into detail on each and every one of those 7 points.
Actually, no longer running. I did lose the election on Tuesday, but that is behind me, and I'm forging ahead and already starting my campaign for 2024. That's another conversation. But I'm going to add one more I, Professor, with all due respect. Yeah. And that is irrelevant. Because everything you said, absolutely irrelevant. And that is Washington, D.C. It doesn't matter. You know, they do these things in spite of what the Constitution says, in spite of what it doesn't matter. And I don't think it's paying off universities. They've been doing that for decades. And as Bill Bennett had said, they've been pushing hundreds of billions of dollars into universities. But that's not what this is about. This is about more, call it more Keynesian economics. This is a way, they've been kicking this can down the road. There's no way possible that $1.6 trillion that they've allowed people not to pay, they're going to all of a sudden make them pay. So that's why they're canceling it. If they could cancel it at all, they would do that. You know what? Everybody wants money. But the problem is not with the students, not with the people with their hand out. There's a pile of money over there. What, I'm going to fault somebody for going to get me some of that money? I don't fault any of the students. They're going to go get theirs too. I fault the government officials. They are enslaving the American people. They are creating massive inflation. They're destroying the dollar. And the future of America under this kind of leadership looks dismal.
Okay. Amen. Pastor, go ahead. Your thoughts.
Well, I saw some friends of mine that said they had been paying their student loans on time, but now they got a call yesterday to tell them to quit paying their student loan because it's going to be forgiven them. They already got a call from the government telling them not to even pay anymore. You know, my kids went to school. They're paying for some of their stuff. Got a kid that played basketball. Most of all, his was free. I've got a little bit of student loan left over. My wife's got a little bit. We've been paying it. I just don't understand how he can do this. Question is the Republicans going to take him to court to try to stop it? Or are they just going to let it alone? Another thing I saw too, Biden, the White House has been retweeting people, Republicans saying, well, they got so much loan forgiven. They got so much loan forgiven. I don't know if you all saw that today.
I did.
Okay. How come they're using I know Biden maybe could have done it, but the White House shouldn't.
Well, no. Political attack. It's a political attack. Yes. Discredit anyone who opposes them, to try and embarrass them for calling out the truth that every economist I've read, including Richard here, Every economist has said this. We see this overseas. The BBC is even admitting that this is an election tactic. So this is his way to try and, this is the way the White House is trying to turn the discussion so that they don't have to deal with the reality of they're buying votes.
But my question is, do we think the courts will stop it? Is somebody going to take this to court and try to stop it? Or not?
Look, there's a solution to that. If the House passes it, the Senate will pass it. We can't stop it. You know, they should take it to court, but they can ram this thing through Congress like they did every other spending bill. You know, I don't know what because you know if you have to have if they can filibuster it based on the the budgetary constraints of the budgetary. But look, you don't think the House can pass this? House can pass this thing in a day.
I think it'd be a lot harder through the Senate.
They won't. You know what? They won't do that yet. They won't pass it yet because there's too many Democrats who have constituents who are saying, "I don't want to pay for someone else's bill. No one's paying for my bills." But they will pass it after the November elections, especially if Democrats lose. They're going to use that as the dead cat bounce. They're going to go in because it's going to be a lame duck session, and they can vote freely without worrying about losing their elections, which sets them up for 2024 when they get to say, see, when we had power, we did everything we could for you, and these evil Republicans wanted to take it away from you. That's what they're going to do. So at this moment, they know it's stupid. They're speaking up and saying this is dumb. And then after the election, when there's no more consequence for them, they will use it to spin and use it for their advantage to set up for 2024. That is what I think is the outlook right now.
And that's why it's going to end up ultimately in the courts. I agree with Vass, everything you said.